improving on the last Worlds placement. Has already achieved that top 4 and is looking to join his testing buddy in the finals. Against him, it's going to be Ondrej, who's also got some great international championship finishes, the EUIC top 4, the Latin American International Championships top 8. Has also been a national finalist in 2016.
Yeah, that was the last year we had national championships, so that one's going to last a while. And then confirmations of the deck here. We've got Arceus, Flying Pikachu. They are at their core largely the same deck, same main Pokemon, same main strategies, but the counts are a little bit off. And it's going to be things like the fact that Ryota is playing those Jolteon, which are basically useless in this matchup. But you just mentioned, you saw a game where actually using that memory capsule on Flying Pikachu VMAX to copy the fly on Flying Pikachu, the memory capsule are sneaky, quite useful cards.
Yeah, especially with such great basic Pokemon to use, and that fly, you know, it's not one of the, it's certainly a risky card, because it can flip tails, you don't even deal any damage, you do nothing at all. But when you're backed against the corner, you can try and make those plays and pull out unlikely victories. And for Ondrej, he doesn't quite have those memory capsules. In theory, he's a slight favorite here going into the game.
Yes.
Thanks to having simply just less dead cards and a better time into Mani, you would think. Another thing to follow, of course, is that the Flying Pikachu VMAX is weak to Lightning. So if you are trying to stay out of range of the Hisui and Decidueye, you also need to be aware of your opponent's opportunity to come in with their own Flying Pikachu VMAX as well.
Yeah, there are lots of weaknesses and resistance to consider here, but it does look like we are pretty much ready to go. Prizes are going out, and we're getting ready for our second top 4. Look at the prizes, they're looking weirdly similar. 3 double turbo energy, 2 for Ondrej, 1 for Ryota, and actually sometimes you need those early ones. And actually we do have a Hisuian Decidueye in the prizes for Ondrej, and that's high up and not one you're going to be able to find very easily.
Right, Ondrej does play 2 copies, thankfully, and he's also prized his Pumpkaboo. We've said this is the only way that he can enable his own abilities and turn them back on if there is a path to the peak, so another small concern for him. It looks like we're going to see Ondrej kick things off here. We are into our second top 4 match in the London World Championships 2022. Ondrej has a Bidoof lead. Ryota starting off with a Hisuian Decidueye V.
Which isn't too bad. I mean, both of these players are going to want to find these cards sooner rather than later. So as long as you can get them out of the active, I think you will be absolutely fine. So what we've got here with Ondrej, we're starting off playing a quick ball. That's going to go and get a basic Pokemon. Also going to give an opportunity to have a look through the deck and actually figure out what exactly is in the prizes. First question, of course, what are you going to discard with a quick ball? You've got to get rid of something. It is a Mani in the end. Not one you really want to drop on turn 1. They are great later on in the game, but something's got to go down. So now we're going to be able to pick a basic Pokemon, but also we're going to be able to have our first look through the deck, try and figure out exactly what it is that's prized.
Yeah, I think really the Pumpkaboo is the only hiccup here. Ondrej's first turn hand is very strong and has a Professor's Research for the following turn. So I think overall he'll be pretty okay with this. And already there's a Hisuian Decidueye V on the top of his deck. I imagine this will be his selection. Certainly is going to be. Ondrej can be fairly content to just attach a Lightning Energy to his Arceus V and pass things over. I think he was holding on to a path to the peak, but I don't really see a reason for him to play this down because he will be the first person to Starbirth regardless.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. And of course, you know, getting that Hisuian Decidueye, very nice in the early game. And if you want to go first, you want to have a really good start. And we've got a pretty good start here from Ondrej. Passes it over to Ryota here. And now, what is their hand looking like? We do have a double turbo energy. It's not looking phenomenal from the looks of it. We do have a Luminion, so it does look like that Luminion is just going to hit the bench straight away, and we're just going to be searching through. And you see there, Ryota's just poking particular cards up to the top there. That's just a quick way of keeping track of energy. Of course, Ryota's energy line is, well, it's a little bit all over the place. It's fantastic. It's clearly working. But it is, I think it's fair to say, a non-standard energy line. Many types of energy, few copies of each. So you need to really make sure what is in the prizes, what is still left in the deck. And then you're going to be able to go and get your supporter card with that Luminion, get yourself set up for the game.
Yeah, Ryota is really skimpy on the basic energy because he has opted to play an additional couple of capped energy in addition to his quad double turbo. Ryota is going to get bailed out by this Luminion because I didn't think there were many other strong cards in hand, to be honest. So he's going to try and Marnie himself into a better position here.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why you play Little Minions, why you play the Minions, why you play Crobat. It basically turns Quick Ball into a really good option in the early game, and even Ultra Ball, to just grab whatever it is you want, and then I've got nothing. Oh, but it's all right, I'll get a Luminion. And you don't want to use it because it's quite weak, it gives up 2 prizes, it takes up a bench space, you'd rather search for something else, etc., etc. But it's one of those cards that can bail you out, and sometimes that's what you need. So we do see a double turbo going on the Hisuian Decidueye, which is lovely. And then we see the Marnie. I mean, do you want to leave that in the active, potentially in the firing line against an Arceus?
Not ideal, that's for certain. And it's not even your ideal place to stash your energy. Regardless, Ryota is going to do it, and not comfortable with just seeing 5 cards. He's hoping that he can find Arceus, of course, and he is actually able to do so. A couple copies, and even has the Path to the Peak. We know that Ondrej prized his Pumpkaboo, so he cannot stop this Path to the Peak. He will not have access to Starbirth this game until he's able to find that Pumpkaboo from prize cards. He has Bibarel, but not many other options. I think he can draw a few from Industrious Incisors here, but it's far from ideal.
No, because you need that pivot, because that Bibarel's not doing very much in the active. The ability works just fine on the bench, and you need your double turbo energy, and you need your Arceus.
Wow, he has the switch. That's huge, actually.
Oh, the switch is big. Switches into that Pikachu, which has free retreat, so that just basically gives you a nice pivot into whatever you want later on in the turn when you've played out all of your actions. I mean, we've got, is that a Quick Ball in hand?
Yeah, it's Quick Ball and Capture Energy. It's a tricky one because you can have the guaranteed attachment to Arceus V and accept that you're Trinity charging this turn, but you pass over so much tempo to Ryota. You really don't want to do this. So instead, Ondrej is going to try and thin the deck an additional basic Pokemon, you would imagine here, and get a fresh 5 cards from Industrious Incisors. Yeah, ideally, he gets the double turbo energy and still an Arceus V-Star.
That would be lovely. This is one of those situations where something like a Crobat or a Luminium would work absolutely beautifully when you've got a 0-card hand. Unfortunately, that Path to the Peak doesn't just turn off Starbirth, it turns off those dudes as well. So, as it stands at the moment, yes, you go and get your second Hisuian Decidueye. That is, of course, one of the things we said is a real difference between these 2 deck lists. But it's not the end of the world because you've got that Bibarel, which actually is another one of the things that we said is a difference between the lists. It does mean that something like a Path to the Peak or a Marnie is not quite as devastating because you've still got Industrious Incisors.
Yeah, he would be completely stuck in the mud if the shoe was on the other foot because the Jolteon wouldn't be doing anything close to this.
Oh, we got the double turbo, and we've got the Ultra Ball as well.
This is huge. He can even discard a Path to the Peak, which he really doesn't need. He can also get rid of a Lightning Energy. He's going to eye up how many cards is in Ryota's hand at the same time here. But he's going to be launching the first attack, getting some really important damage onto the biggest threat on Ryota's board, the Hisuian Decidueye V. And this is excellent from Ondrej. You always feel a little bit concerned when you don't have Starbirth. How often have we said that you can cherry pick a couple important cards and have a barnstorming turn? In this case, it's just been Bibarel that's got him there. And then a Marnie as well.
Very nice, because we did see no supporter. That was all done off the Industrious Incisors. So playing that Marnie is absolutely huge. It gets you an extra 5 cards. Gives Ryota a new hand as well. And to be fair, Ryota's hand was quite small to begin with. He's actually got 1 more card than he had a moment ago. But what's important here for Ondrej is just being able to get those cards, being able to have something going for next turn. And actually, sure, there's no abilities, but the Bibarel's down. We've got the attack going off. I think especially under Path to the Peak lot, that's about the best turn Ondrej could have expected.
This is exceptional. Let's not forget that Ondrej only plays 1 copy of Switch, I believe, so he naturally had that from a Marnie to even move this Bibarel in the first place, so he's got to be jumping for joy with that. He got a real good break.
Yeah, it's always nice when you get those breaks, when you can draw into the cards you need manually, none of that searching malarkey. That is absolutely huge. Now we got the Arceus in the active, and of course we're accelerating energy, and there's no surprise here. Obviously, the energy's going on to the Hisuian Decidueye, but actually onto the Flying Pikachu as well. And I like this, because basically splitting up the energy and saying to your opponent, well, I mean, you can try and gust and take a prize if you want, but you can't take out the best option because I got multiple options.
Yeah, it makes me slightly nervous in case Ryota does get a KO plus Marnie of his own, because Ondrej's basically saying that he has access to double turbo in hand for any of his attackers to start responding on Ryota. The good news for Ondrej is if Ryota even attacks with his Hisuian Decidueye, it's the only thing with energy on the board, so it doesn't feel like it's got any longevity to it as a play. Ryota doesn't have much, I don't think, here. Ultra Ball might be his only option, and he might have to get rid of Path to the Peak perhaps here with his Pumpkaboo.
Yeah, he could do that, use that, and then go for the Star Birth to get any 2 cards out using that V-Star power. It's not really what you're looking for. The whole point of putting Path to the Peak down was to slow down your opponent, but it slows down you just as much, and we do see that Pumpkaboo being poked to the top there, so I think you've absolutely called it there, Joe. I think we're going to see the Pumpkaboo coming out, getting rid of that Path to the Peak so that we can Star Birth, and that's going to be a little bit awkward. It's got to be done, it's just not what you really want to do.
Yeah, and from Ryota's position, do you retreat now and maybe even memory capsule, attach a double turbo and use the Trinity charge on the lower form of your Arceus, just the V?
I like the idea of using memory capsule to copy the attack of the V, but I don't like retreating and getting rid of that energy attachment. We did see the fighting energy be thrown straight down by Ryota there, so it does look like they're eyeing up an attack. Could they be going for the V-Star as well? I mean, they're not getting a KO with just the Pokemon V. It doesn't do enough damage, even with the weakness, so maybe this is the play? It does seem like it's... I mean, especially if there's no KO here, if you're just doing damage, I'm not loving this. I don't want to give up my only Hisuian Decidueye and 2 prizes just to put some damage on Arceus.
Yeah, it's a real debate for Ryota. Do you take the tempo, remove an Arceus V-Star from the opponent so they can't continue to Trinity Nova themselves? Or do you try and have a bit of a more passive turn and set up attackers multiple threats on your own side of the field?
It is an interesting one. I'm not sure there's any... I mean, there is a right answer. I don't know if it's if we can figure it out now, but Ryota is absolutely signaling what they're going to do, and I do like this. I like this. So what we've basically got there is a second Path to the Peak, and we got a Professor's Research. So Ryota's basically gone, right, I'm going to get rid of Path to the Peak for 1 turn, and then I'm going to get what I need from Starbirth, and I'm going to play it straight back down again, but I did not see much in Ryota's hand here.
Oh, V-Star.
And we got a Quick Ball, but a Quick Ball will only get a basic. That won't get the V-Star either. Bunch of supporters, energy, Quick Ball. So Ryota's not going to be taking a KO here. They can attack, and that will be lovely, but there's no KO coming.
And Ryota only plays 1 Hisuian Decidueye and 1 V-Star. Does play an Ordinary Rod, but it's going to be a long way back to try and recover this. Is Ryota debating a retreat now to try and protect his 1 Fighting-type Pokemon?
Yeah, you need it. If it's your only Fighting-type Pokemon in the deck, it's so good against that Arceus. What you really, really want to be trying to do here is going, right, actually, I'm taking a big KO. That's what I want to do. Big KO on Arceus. And if I give up 2 prizes and I lose my only Hisuian Decidueye in the process, I've still gotten a big 2 prizes out of it. And we do see there the manual retreat into the Pumpkaboo. That is definitely not what Ryota was going for. Wow. But it's one of those situations where you've got to make the best of a bad situation, because that's all you can really do.
Ondrej's got to be feeling good about this. He plays 4 copies of Boss's Orders, instantly has 1, so can immediately punish the slower turn from Ryota. Also has an Ultra Ball, can continue to thin some of these other cards, and then top his hand back up with the barrel. It's excellent here. I think he's really in a commanding position already in this game.
Yeah, this is looking absolutely great. The Ultra Ball can get the Hisuian Decidueye V-Star, which it looks like we know there's double turbo energy in the hand. You called that out last term. And then you don't need to have a supporter in hand every turn, because you've got that barrel sitting there on the bench, just ready to go, drawing those cards every turn. And it looks like Ondrej is going to be going up by 2 prizes. And, I mean, we could take out the Arceus for a couple of prizes. We could take out the Hisuian Decidueye first, which is probably the better option, get that threat off the board, and then maybe go after the Arceus next turn. There's so many options, and you can already see there's quite an easy 4 prizes on the board, at least for Ondrej, over the next 2 turns.
Yeah, you can see what he's eyeing up here. Finish off the Hisuian Decidueye, then you know for certain that your Arceus is safe. For a good amount of time, actually, because Ryota doesn't even play Raihan. So there's no attack other than possibly just a little paralysis attempt from Ryota next turn.
No, there's not enough energy on the board. There's no counter sitting out there. I mean, certainly in game 1, Ondrej has taken an absolutely gigantic step forward. We're only kind of 12 minutes into game 1, so we don't need to think about conceding to save time or any of that. But if you're Ryota here, you do need to start thinking, do I have a route back here? Because, I mean, you've already learned that your opponent is playing the Bibera. You've already learned that your opponent is playing the 2 Hisuian Decidueye. You've pretty much learned what you needed to about this matchup already. So The question is, do you believe you've got a realistic route back? And it starts with Marnie.
Interesting, Ryota didn't choose to attach a lightning energy to his Pikachu and take the 50-50 of trying to Thunder Shock. Instead, could be looking for the combination of double turbo energy plus the memory capsule that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that could be absolutely the way to go here. We've got not much
at all.
Oh, and it looks like Ryota is... What are we doing here? It looks like it's a concession. I think it is a concession. So Ryota just gives the game to Ondrej here, basically saying, look, there's nothing I can do. So Ondrej wins game 1 and is halfway towards a World Championship final appearance. That's pretty good.
Yeah, excellent stuff from him. He was able to calmly and collectively still get over the line. Did very well from the Marnie to find the barrel switch, still naturally found the double turbo energy, naturally found the V-Star. That was a really strong turn from him. And at the same time, he was able to Marnie Ryota back down into a really awkward hand himself. So these little edges, Ondrej with a slightly simpler deck with more draw power that isn't based on V Pokemon, really coming in clutch here. Yeah,
it's a really, really good shout. And it's interesting that Ondrej didn't actually play, you know, the full anti-Palkia suite, and was the only one of the Arceus that didn't play out Palkia in the top cut, was drawn against a Mew and then an Arceus, so hasn't been punished for not playing the Jolteon and is honestly being rewarded. And sometimes this is what it takes. Nobody wins a World Championship or has a deep run in the World Championship without a helping of luck. You've got to get a decent helping of luck, and well, I mean, frankly, this is working out quite nicely at the moment, and I do think that last game was played absolutely expertly. We had 3 Pokemon on the bench, we had a bit of energy to each, we got the Bibarel out nice and early, really seeming to prioritize that. The Marnie coming down at the right turn was absolutely crucial, and so far, this is going about as well as Ondrej could have expected.
You can see he's looking up at the skies right now, saying, just one more and then I'm there. There's still an hour on the clock, still potentially 2 games to play, but well, you've got to be feeling good now. You've got to just keep your nerves in check. Make sure you continue to play as well as you did here, because there's still a lot of luck that can come into things. You are the player going second in a mostly mirror match, so you are at a slight disadvantage in the second game.
Yeah, and you need to make the most of this, because most players, very few players, don't make 2 World Championship finals. We've seen like Igor Costa, Ross Cawthorn, Shintaro Ito, Jason Klaczynski. Like, I think it might literally just be the 4 of them that have made the finals twice. So most players don't get this close, no matter how big the caliber, no matter how good they are. So you can't expect you're going to be back here anytime soon, no matter how good you are. So you've got to take advantage of this, and you've got to, you know, if you're Ondrej, you've got to just, like I say, look into the ceiling, keep calm, keep it nice and level. When you win the game, you can celebrate as much as you like. Right now, it needs to be, okay, what went well in game 1? Right, so I had my Bibarel out, I had my variety of attackers, I spread my energy around, I used Marnie at the right time. Even though I was put under Path to the Peak Lock early, I did everything right. And the only real stroke of luck in that first game was having that switch in hand.
Ondrej, speaking of keeping a cool head, he started to put his prize cards just onto the table and not even onto our feedback, but here he is. You see, ooh, the switch and the one of his 2 Hisuian Decidueye. Ryota's prize is 1 copy of Hisuian Decidueye V-Star. That is not good.
That is really not good. I mean, I was distracted by all of the balls in the in the prizes. There were so many of them. But if you only play a 1-1 line, this is one of the risks. It could end up being prize. And you know Ryota's going to go straight for the Hisuian Decidueye because it is such a good card in this matchup. But Ryota is about to discover that the 1 V-Star is prized, and I can't imagine they're going to be loving it.
Ryota's hand is so strong, he doesn't even have any good fodder. You think with so many cards that don't do much in the matchup, it would be an easy choice, but he's going to have to sacrifice the Luminion V here in order to Ultra Ball and get some basic Pokemon established. The Arceus V, of course, is the go-to. We know he has a Lightning Energy in hand to manually attach for the turn. Again, there's not much else you really need on this opening. Ryota didn't take the time to check his own prize cards. I think maybe a little bit aware of the clock, knowing he has to win 2 games as quickly as possible here. But we still see the double turbo energy attachment. This plays well into Marnie, so that you already have it established, and is going to pass things over to Ondrej here, who has his own quick ball and at least a supporter here. So both players are well into this game. And we can see if Ondrej is going to be defensive and try and look towards using his own Path to the Peak. It's already in hand. And Ondrej is actually debating whether to discard. Yeah, just going to get rid of an Ultra Ball here. even though he plays 4 copies of Boss's Orders, he values them so highly. You know that you need them on the key turns. You just want to maximize those odds very often. And in this matchup, it's all about hitting key weaknesses at the right time. So he's instead going to discard Ultra Ball. He's going to have his own look through here and can get his own Arceus V developed.
Yeah, that's probably the way to go, of course. You know, no matter how good your tech attackers are, they tend to be quite expensive. You know, things like Hisuian Decidueye V-Star should be a little bit too expensive. It's not that easy to accelerate fighting energy in the current format. But it doesn't matter. Arceus has got your back. If you're a Pokemon V or V-Star or V-Max, Arceus has absolutely got you back in terms of getting all that energy. So we do see just the single energy attachment. There will be no turn 1 acceleration, as lovely as that would be. But that's absolutely fine. You get the energy on this turn. Then next turn, we're just looking for the double turbo and the V-Star.
Oh, boy.
And now it's Ondrej that actually puts the path down. And one of the things we said back in game 1, Ondrej dealt with the path absolutely fine. It would not have been the same if the shoe was on the other foot. Well, now it is.
It absolutely is. And this really is spinning the wheel because you don't have your own Starbirth at your disposal when you put the Path of the Peak in play. Ondrej is able to establish a second Arceus V here, and is likely passing the turn after that.
Yeah, and what you really want here, you want to get your Bibaro. That's what you're really looking for. And then Path to the Peak and Marnie and all are just so much less effective because you can draw cards. It's not established yet. What does Ryota have? I mean, the good news is the Flying Pikachu's got free retreat and Arceus has a double turbo. Yeah. So we have actually got at least something here. Do we have the V-Star to get the KO while accelerating energy? That would be huge, getting rid of the Bidoof here, but I don't think we do.
It's a Power Edge. I think you can just take the 1 prize knockout, removing the Bidoof. It's not the acceleration you're hoping for, but with only Arceus V in play for Ondrej, you're not too threatened by a 1-hit KO. The Marnie has been painful for Ryota, but he's at least able to take the first prize here and remove a lot of Ondrej's draw potential.
No, I like that very much. And if you do know your Hisuian Decidueye's prize, then that may well mean that you want to take prizes as fast as you can to try and get access to that card. Of course, most players take the prizes from the bottom to the top, and actually that means that Hisuian Decidueye is going to be one of the last prizes taken. So it is going to be a very awkward game to navigate. I don't mind the setup. I like taking the first prize. But Ondrej here, if they can go and get themselves an Arceus V-Star here, this is going to be very big.
Just a Trinity Charge. He attaches the fighting energy. Now searching through the deck. Couple Lightning onto the Flying Pikachu. Choosing not to attach the third one anywhere. Could easily have gone active as well. But just going to keep a couple. I know he has 1 energy in hand and also an Evolution Incense. So really he's trying to stay reactive here to Ryota.
Yeah, I don't mind this at all. You've got what you need at the end of the day. You've got an attacker set up. I mean, potentially 2. At this stage, you're just a card or 2 or a couple of cards away from attacking with either your Flying Pikachu VMAX or with your Arceus. What have we got from Ryota here? It's a very big top deck. It is. I mean, there's a Quick Ball there. We got Capture Energy's not terrible. We got Boss's Orders.
Yeah, you can begin to power up another attacker just manually here. You are going to Quick Ball away to find your Hisuian Decidueye V. It's threatening to Ondrej. We know that the V-Star is in the prize cards, but it's still something you can go for. The other line is to capture energy onto your Flying Pikachu, and that's exactly what we're going to see here. Don't really see a reason to use Boss's Orders unless you're going to try and trap Ondrej's other Arceus V and slowly 2-hit KO it.
Yeah, if you want to get into Pikachu up, you want to be going for the big 1-hit KO. That's unfortunately not an option here, so just getting that Hisuian Decidueye V out so you can accelerate some energy to it. And it's not too bad. It's not going to do any damage, but you're at least getting the energy.
Interesting.
Okay. It. What's interesting, Joe?
Going for the Trinity Charge rather than the sort of panic Boss's Orders play. Both players really aren't drawing much. So Ryota had the chance to Boss's Orders and try and attack the Arceus V over a couple turns. The one that's just got nothing attached. So a bit of good fortune for Ondrej here. He's holding on to Evolution Incense and a basic energy in hand. So he can start launching some Trinity Novas now.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one, because you're right. Trinity Nova is quite easy to establish from Ondrej's current board state. You play a Boss's Orders, bring the other Arceus active. Obviously not the Flying Pikachu, the free retreat would kind of ruin that. But you bring the Arceus active, and maybe you can slow down your opponent, buy yourself a couple of turns, and I mean a slow 2-hit KO while buying some time to set up. That would be kind of beautiful. It's not on the cards at the moment, so all we've got here is your energy, which is actually largely on the Flying Pikachu here.
Yeah, and that's because of the prize cards. Ondrej picks up an Ultra Ball. He has the option to Pump Kaboo now, and he could then Starbirth. How aggressive does he want to play his hand? It's a big top deck, potentially. Really depends on how far ahead or behind Ondrej feels. Is he happy enough leaving the Path to the Peak in play? Yep, we are going to see the Evolution Incense for the Arceus. Does have Ultra Ball, can remove the other 3 cards from hand and enable himself Starbirth here. We're going to see it, I think. We saw the Pumpkaboo come to the top.
And it is interesting to note that unlike what we usually see, there's no double turbo energy on the Arceus. So if there's a choice bout available, could actually get a one-hit KO on the Arceus V on Ryota's side, but there's no choice bout on the list, is there?
No, he just relies on no tools actually at all, trying to make space and just hitting for weaknesses is his main strategy here.
I didn't think, I was a little bit hopeful for a second there, but I mean, eventually something has to not make its way into this list. So it would have been an option for a lot of decks, not for this one, but even so, putting a bunch of damage on is always good, accelerating energy is always good, and Ondrej, you know, 1 game up in this World Championships top 4, and certainly seems to be on the front foot here.
Capture Energy was one of his choices. I imagine we're going to start seeing, more Hisuian Decidueye hitting the board so he can Trinity Nova and start threatening his own fighting type coverage. Very strong turn from Ondrej, and I think from this professor's research, he's going to be looking to re-establish the Path to the Peak. He does play a full 4 copies in his deck list. He's got a deep dig to try and find it.
Doing exactly what Ryota did back in game 1, bumping that Path to the Peak with Pumpkaboo, using your abilities while you've got the chance to do so, and then immediately trying to re-establish it to stop your opponent having an advantage. Does he hit it? I didn't see the last card, but it didn't look like he had it.
He does.
No, the last card's a Bidoof.
Yeah, Bidoof is a helpful little guy to put onto the bench. We saw how good it was in the first game, and it is going to fill up Ondrej's board, but don't think there's much else. He is still getting the first attack in. You are still putting a lot of pressure onto the Arceus, but Ryota can now breathe a sigh of relief. He now has abilities back online.
Yeah, that's really nice. You lose a whole bunch of damage put onto your Pokemon, but you do have access to those abilities. And as long as you can get the V-Star here, we're going to definitely see a Starbirth. And now, is there still a Quick Ball in Ryota's hand like there was last turn? Because if that Quick Ball's been saved, that would give a lovely out.
Yeah, I don't think it was played. He just Capture Energied on the previous turn, so Quick Ball could get him back into good stead.
It may well be
that Crobat V, of course. That would be the basic that he would look for to refresh this hand completely.
Yeah, there's no Minion. We can already see that in the discard pile there, so it would have to be the Crobat. But maybe that's why he saves the Quick Ball. Maybe knowing
intelligent.
Oh, and actually there is a Path to the Peak there. If he wants to be a little bit cheeky, he could play the Crobat, use Starbirth, and then put his own Path to the Peak down. Less impactful when Ondrej's already used the V-Star power, but could still be an option to stop things like the Minion or Crobat.
Yeah, there are downsides, of course, to having to put the Crobat V into play. It has a fragile amount of hit points. It can be a target later on in the game for Ondrej, but Ryota has no choice. His hand is pretty unplayable, so he really is going to need to see a few strong cards here from the Dark Asset. Ideally, he can be using his own Starbirth this turn.
Yeah, and that Crobat is in range of an Arceus V-Star attack, or even a Hisuian Decidueye V, not even the V-Star. Does 100 with the weakness to fighting would be enough here, so that Crobat is going to be a very enticing option, although at the stand at the moment, he's searched for it, he's not actually put it into play. You got to imagine, you had to imagine it was going to happen, because otherwise, why would you search for it knowing that a Path to the Peak could come back down? So we draw until we've got 6 cards in hand.
Not a lot of help. No V-Star. Oh, hangs his head. Ryota not happy to see it. No draw supporter either. Missed a lot of outs there.
Yeah, there was a lot to go for. Didn't hit any of them. So as it stands at the moment, all we've got there is just Flying Pikachu in the active. It can attack. It's got attacks to use, but they're not the attacks you really want.
Oh, is Ryota debating the fly? That's my main question now. You hate to put yourself in a position where you don't deal any damage this turn. Is there any other stalling tactic you can go for? The regular Flying Pikachu for Ondrej coming into the active. They do hit each other for weakness. Could be a fly KO with head. This is a massive flip.
What have we got?
My
It is heads.
It's heads.
Oh my goodness, we get a KO with fly. That is awesome.
Like I said, Ryota knows when his back's against the wall to make this play. And now you cannot deal any damage to this flying Pikachu, forcing Ondrej to use a boss's orders this turn to deal any damage.
That was absolutely huge. Ryota's back was well and truly against the wall. It was going to take a lot to get back into it, and certainly taking a 2-prize KO while making yourself, immune to damage the following turn. That's a good start.
And crucially, you take out your opponent's lightning-type attacker, so you know your flying Pikachu maybe that little bit tankier. Right now, Ondrej can get a KO because there are no double turbo energy on his Arceus. But does he want to track down any other Pokemon? Actually, sorry, he of course does have to Gust because the fly heads.
Yeah.
But does already have the boss's orders. That's a crucial piece of his deck. He plays 4 copies, so
nice.
Never going to miss out on that.
You're going to miss out sometimes.
I say never.
We've all done it. But we do have a boss's orders at least in hand this turn. So, and that's what you're looking for. When you got something like this, you need to go after the bench. If you can't go after the active, go after the bench, and that is going to be the plan here. And I mean, it could be just something as simple as just KOing that Crobat, because actually you can do that while, but you don't want the Crobat. You don't want the Crobat, you want the Hisuian Decidueye, because that is a threat. And by now, if Ondrej didn't already know, it's pretty obvious there's only 1 copy in Ryota's deck. Yeah,
it's too dangerous to be left around on the board, so we are just going to see 200 damage, Trinity Nova. There are no more basic energies for Ondrej. So he's just going to shuffle up his deck, and he has a big prize disparity here. He's quite behind, but the board state isn't the worst, really. Doesn't feel great. Ryota definitely bought himself a lot with that heads flip. We'll see if he can capitalize on it now.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic getting the heads, and that was needed. You talked earlier about the fact that there was a game where there was 2 flips on fly that came up heads that absolutely saved in a game earlier. And sometimes you need that little bit of luck to keep going through a big tournament like this. But we do have an Ultra Ball in hand from Ryota here, and presumably it's going to be some kind of evolution, whether it's your Arceus V-Star, your Pikachu V-Max, or your Hisuian Decidueye. Given that there's no path to the peak in play and that V-Star marker is very much unflipped, you've got to think it's going to be Arceus.
Yeah, the good news for Ondrej here is that there's still the Hisuian Decidueye V-Star, I believe, in the prize cards.
Yep.
So although there's going to be a Starbirth, I imagine it's going to be looking for a boss's orders play to continue to pressurize prizes here. Most likely going to look to take out Ondrej's Bibarel and put himself back into a 2-prize win condition.
That might have to be the play here, and that's not too bad, to be honest with you. I mean, you've got to take 3 prizes to win the game. There's no 3 prizes on Ondrej's side of the board, and Flying Pikachu is not going to be coming out at this stage. So take out that Bibarel, turn off your opponent's, draw engine, which is super annoying, and put yourself down to just needing 2 prizes to win, which could then be taken with, well, pretty much any of your Pokemon. I mean, there are some options, although Ondrej has been able to get to this stage without playing Luminion or Crobat, the weakest of those Pokemon, which is always a good feeling.
Yeah, it's actually the Hisuian Decidueye V-Star that would have that higher damage threshold that's still rooting around in the prize cards, so still awkward for Ryota. He's debating a retreat here. Don't think unless his V-Star power can find a switch, he may have to remove some of this energy.
Don't really want to be removing the energy. You want it there for an attack later in the game. I mean, if you're Ryota, you're thinking, look, I've taken 3 prizes already. I've not hit it. At some point, I've got to hit the V-Star. Hopefully, I'll hit it off of this. But, of course, you are going to be accelerating energy as you attack here. So here is the Super Rod.
Yeah, and the Ordinary Rod, huge here. Can re-establish energy back from this retreat. Far less painful. Can also choose to get a Luminion V back in the mix, just for some additional outs later on. Will we see the Starbirth this turn? I do personally like getting rid of the Bibarel because it gives you 1 more card to see to maybe pull the V-Star out of your own prize cards. We're now going to see the shuffle up here, and I'm not sure, I think it was a quick ball being played from Ryota. I think he had a number of them in hand, but he's also debating the Starbirth V-Star power as well.
Yeah, there's always a lot of options here. There's a lot of things you can potentially do. I mean, access to pretty much your entire deck other than arguably the 1 card you really want. And then it's just what is actually going to get you there to victory. I mean, You've got actually the minion comes straight down here, and it is the boss's orders, which looks like we're probably going to be going after the barrel here, and I really like this play, because that way you can actually get the energy back onto that Hisui and Decidueye, so the manual retreat hasn't hurt you as much as it could have done. So we've not actually selected the supporter yet, but it is going to be that boss's orders, and it's got to be for the Bibarel.
Yeah, it's really scary for Ondrej, because if you've just put some basic energy back into your deck, you can power up the Hisui and Decidueye. Ondrej's not to know that the V-Star is still in those prize cards. So you're really threatening here. The Starbirth going to come in alongside this boss's orders, so he can continue to thin or just give himself extra outs for the following turn. The thing I don't really like about this Starbirth, interestingly enough, is you're telegraphing that you don't have a V-Star, because I think you just immediately put it into play if you do have access to it. But possibly could be looking to reattach maybe even the double turbo energy onto one of his Pokemon.
Yeah, that might be the play here. We do have that boss's orders. It has come out, and are we going to see it straight away? I believe it is actually. No, we've got the flying Pikachu comes down. Oh, actually two boss's orders in hand here.
So
this
he has
is
a boss for this turn. I think he's got another path of the peak to play down himself here. He's used his own abilities for the turn. Going to try and shut down Ondrej whilst knocking out his draw engine, putting himself just a 2-prize card Pokemon away, any of the V or V-Stars on Ondrej's board, but none of them can be one-hit KO'd currently. And Ryota's going to get the bad news that from this prize card, I don't think he should be taking the Hisui and Decidueye V-Star.
No, not if the prize cards are taken in the regular order, then we're not going to see the Hisui and Decidueye V-Star, which is going to be very, very awkward. So there's no obvious answer here in terms of what to get. It's going to be the flying Pikachu V Max if everything goes to chalk. I mean, maybe he mixes it up a little bit.
For Ondrej, I think you still have to target the Decidueye and try and take a 2-2-2 prize map. Use a lot of your boss's orders in a row. Probably have to be retreating around, dancing around. We know Ondrej has to play Amani this turn because Ryota has his own boss's orders in hand. So if Ondrej can use the Mani and just take a knockout and then look to boss for a couple turns in a row, it's still in his hands, actually. It would only be a couple turns of dodging and weaving boss's orders, because he can retreat so much around this board. He has so much energy flooded around his attackers. He's behind on the prize race, but he has a very realistic map to win in 3 turns.
Absolutely, and let's not forget, we know Ryota's got that boss's orders in hand, so if Amani does come down, that is going to take that boss's orders and put it on the bottom of the deck, which is not what you're looking for.
Doesn't have Mani. I think that's going to close out this second game and take it to a game 3 here. Ondrej has Raihan, but that is not going to stop Ryota from having boss's orders. I mean, the boss's orders isn't game, so maybe Ondrej has to Raihan this turn and get a Mani for the following one, or even boss's orders for the following turn is probably his best bet here. So he can continue to just take a 2-2-2 prize route.
Yeah, I think that's the way. And like you say, 3 turns, 2 prizes, 2 prizes, 2 prizes, boom, 6 prizes, done, you've won, off you go. That is absolutely the route here. But you need to make sure you've got enough attackers, you need to make sure you've got enough boss's orders while also potentially disrupting your opponent. I mean, if you're Ryota here, is it worth even just trying to go for the flying Pikachu? Because if you're not going to get a 1-hit KO, you might as well get a 2-hit KO with your biggest, chonkiest attacker, which does have resistance to fighting, if I remember correctly. And, you know, it's not going to get 1-hit KO'd. So if I'm Ryota here, I mean, obviously the flying Pikachu goes active because it's got free retreat anyway. But I think, honestly, I'm just looking to attack here and then boss's orders next turn for the win.
I'm really not sure about Ondrej's choice with the Raihan. I think I like boss's orders the most because you can still stay just out of range using your V Pokemon without the need to V-Star. Ondrej Raihan for the Hisui and Decidueye V-Star. I feel like boss is necessary for his route because Ryota, as you said, is happy just to swing into the Arceus V-Star here. The Max Balloon going to do 160 damage. It's over to Ondrej here, who really needs a top deck now. Feels like he's a little behind. He picks up the Mani. That can disrupt Ryota's option to have boss. That's what Ryota's holding on to. So Ondrej does have a way to retreat here. The Ultra Ball as well going to help Ondrej get another V-Star into play. Stay a little bit more out of range with hit points. He can continue to thin some of these useless Pokemon that have clogged up his hand at the same time.
Yeah, so we do see the Ultra Ball coming down here. We get rid of the Flying Pikachu. We get rid of the Crobat. It is obviously the Arceus V-Star we are going for here. And, I mean, as it stands at the moment, you kind of need to get out the active.
Yeah.
You don't just stay there and let Ryota get the KO. And again, you know, not unlike on Ryota's turn, Ondrej doesn't have an obvious KO here. It needs to be gusting combined with something like the Hisuian Decidueye, or really gust the Hisuian Decidueye combined with literally anything, because that's got a lot of damage on it already. But are we just seeing an attack?
Ray sees 3 cards. We know that he does have to Marnie. It's not obvious to Ondrej, though.
It really isn't. We know that Ryota's got boss in hand. What Ondrej saw was Luminion for boss, and then played boss.
Exactly.
And you would imagine that Ryota wouldn't have the boss in hand, because why would you Luminion for a boss if you already had a boss?
Yeah, he's just going to attack, so Ryota going to slam some damage counters on, knowing that he has brought this to a 3rd game here. Excellent to see. He's played so well.
There is the boss's orders.
Ryota. Game 3 here in top 4.
Yeah, Ryota gets the KO, takes it to a game 3. And this is what we see when we've got these, you know, mirror matches. It's little things here or there. And that's quite impressive because, you know, we said in the open.
Ryota praising his flying Pikachu there. The big head flip on fly, keeping his dream alive of being a world's finalist.
Oh, yeah, that fly was absolutely huge. And, you know, in the setup, we said, oh, you know, he doesn't have his Hisuian Decidueye V-Star. That could be a problem, and it could have been a problem. As it turned out, nah, Pikachu. Pikachu's the mascot for a reason.
Pikachu did so well there. I mean, I think he loses on the spot, more or less, if it's a Tails flip.
Oh, yeah, that was a huge flip.
Absolutely massive. 36 minutes left on the clock. Ondrej will at least get to go first. It's true that he still has a small advantage just in terms of deck list, and going first is an additional advantage. Really comes down to, at this point, how well their opening hands are and if they can establish the usual opening turns.
Yeah, that's what it is all going to come down to here. I mean, going first is a huge advantage. You've got to imagine Ondrej's going to choose to go first here. And it's going to be down to the opens. I mean, Ondrej, we saw in game 1. Game 1 was brilliant, absolutely wonderful. Getting that Bibber out, getting that path to the peak, getting all those attackers set up and really just saying, you know what, I feel really good, I think I've got this. And Ryota, I mean, game 2 was a bit of a messy game. We saw that with the fly. Either of these players have the opportunity to set up and roll, but it is not that easy.
No, especially when there's so much Marnie in the mix. Both players continually thrown the other off course, forcing Pumpkaboo to come down. I think Ondrej missing off the research. The path to the peak was also massive in that 2nd game.
Yeah, the path to the peak was absolutely huge. It's so weird that we've seen, you know, both players kind of bump it to give themselves the option, but being able to re-establish it after you bump it is such a big deal. And if you get rid of it, but then you can't re-establish it, you can actually be helping out your opponent, sometimes even more than yourself. That ain't good.
So as we go into this 3rd game, Ondrej has to, again, keep calm. You've just lost to a fly. That's going to be a little bit annoying, especially when you're in top 4. You're in such a good spot, and you know that your list is a little bit favored, so you just got to keep a cool head now. Ryota living on a prayer with that fly. He's got to be thinking right now, the trophy may even have his name on it if you have luck like this.
Absolutely. I mean, it's round 3 or 4. I think it might have been round 4 yesterday that we saw the double fly. You know, we're still a long way away from top cut at that stage. That's what got Ryota to 4-0 during yesterday's event. So, quite frankly, it's, you know, it's got to give that confidence boost. Like, you don't really want to win with fly. What you want to do is set up and run for your opponent with skillful play and lots of other attackers. And there was plenty of skillful play from Ryota, but there was also that cross your fingers, come on, heads on a fly. It's not how you want to win, but there comes a point where you're like, you know what? This is probably my year. I keep flipping heads.
And when your board state is far worse than a 50-50, trying to bring it back towards a 50-50 feels amazing. Getting that one heads flip is just excellent for you, so you take that deal every time, especially from that board state.
Yeah, it was an absolute, and it's an option, you know, and I know we're you know, joking a little bit about fly and being saved by fly and using memory capsule to copy fly with a VMAX, but actually, good players know all of their outs.
Exactly.
No, you're not playing this for fly. You're playing it for max balloon. But you know what? Sometimes fly is what you actually need to win the game, and it's the really good players who are not only aware of that, but are actively thinking, right, you know what? Fly is what's going to win. Let's do this. Prizes are nowhere near as bad for Ryota here. 1 double turbo, that'll be okay. 1 fighting energy, not ideal, but there are 2.
Double Bidoof for Ondrej. That does not feel good.
No.
His advantage is just completely diminished now. Him having the setup Pokemon not accessible, real issue for him. Ondrej does have the Hisuian Decidueye lead. Going first is very threatening, actually. Does have a double turbo energy. Also an Arceus V. This is a really good start and a lot of pressure for Ryota to deal with.
Yeah, I like this because Ryota's going into his first turn going, what? Seriously? If I try using Arceus, there's a very good chance you just get an energy and KO. Now remember that Hisuian Decidueye V will not get a straight KO onto Arceus. You will need the V-Star, but then again, V-Star and an energy, you've got the KO, and that is very, very big.
And you can even use the Decidueye V-Star's ability as well, the Star of Fortune, if you really have to. It's another great way to continue to set up. So he may even Ondrej may even prioritize just immediately grabbing the Hisuian Decidueye V-Star. Although, of course, Starbuff gets you everything you need. So
yeah, Starbuff gets 22 cards. The Hisuian Decidueye, I think it's discard your hand, draw 7. We've not
just
actually...
draw up to 8.
Oh, draw up until 8. Thank you very much. So, you know, it's not the one you generally use because Arceus is better, but you're not going to go for Starburst if you could get that plus the attack as well. So, no, I like this very much indeed.
And Ryota now having a quick look through his own prize cards, making sure he's aware of everything. He did prize 1 of his fighting energy. That's something to track, of course, as he does search his Hisuian Decidueye V. Has even more ball search here and has the Path of the Peak. I think this is actually massive. So we're going to see, is that a 3-card discard?
I didn't quite see. Was a boss?
He's trying to Ultra Ball away 3 cards.
Okay, I thought I saw 3 cards there, but I didn't want to say it because I was like, no, I'm seeing things. I'm not. There was a 3-card discard, but it was caught very nice and early. Absolutely no advantage gained there. That would have been a disadvantage.
Yeah.
So we carry on with play, discarding the correct number of cards and saving a boss's orders, which is really big. Yeah. So, no, I love this. And it does look like we're eyeing up the Crobat.
Certainly is, yeah. He easily could have got rid of 3 cards anyway just by attaching the memory capsule. So there was always a way to see 5 cards from Dark Asset if Ryota chose to. Instead is going to, I think actually held the switch. So he may play switch into his own Hisuian Decidueye V to stay out of the firing line of Ondrej's before using the Dark Asset for 5 cards.
That might absolutely be the play. And yes, you called it there quite nicely. There was actually an advantage because you discard an extra card, Crobat draws more.
Draw 4.
Yeah, but you could have just attached the memory capsule like you said. So it all worked out quite nicely indeed. And it's lots of ball search and a double turbo energy, it looks like. So
all right, double turbo, pretty good. You can Trinity Charge at least, get some value out of your Arceus V, get some backup attackers ready to go.
It's so awkward, though, Trinity charging, knowing that you might be giving up 2 prizes doing so. I mean, what's in Ondrej's hand here is just absolutely huge. And I want a Path to the Peak. Oh, he's got Path to the Peak. I think you've got to play this because you've got to stop your opponent being able to get the KO. It does come into play. I love this. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, Ryota had the option to then go fishing for Luminion with Ultra Ball, but chose not to. You know, he hadn't played a supporter this turn.
No.
So, could have continued to dig deeper, but instead it's just going to commit the Path of the Peak and hope this is frustrating for Ondrej as Ryota begins to power up his own copy.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't put Path to the Peak down, then a Starburst 100% gets you there.
Yeah, he's definitely going to Path of the Peak, but you could Luminion first.
Oh, absolutely.
Grab the supporter, play the Path, draw your own supporter. Like, you could even Marnie Ondrej and give yourself a fresh hand, choosing to keep that option available for later. But the Trinity Charge is big here. The Crobat really helped out.
It really did. You don't always want to drop Crobat and Luminion straight away because that does really limit your options in the late game. It's a very marginal call here, and I agree it would have been a very good option, would have given access to more cards. But do you want to use both your basic support Pokemon straight away? Either way, it's a moot point. This is what Ryota's chosen to do. So now we're over to Ondrej. Do we have access? We do. Oh, well, there is an Ultra Ball. That Ultra Ball could have got the Arceus, which then could have got the Hisuian Decidueye and the energy, and then the KO. All of this is moot because it is there. We don't have any but Doof because they're in the prizes, and things are looking rough.
So bad for Ondrej. He's not been able to look at his own deck yet, so He's going to value the barrel in hand because it's the only way that unlocks his hand from his perspective, but he's going to learn some bad news real quick.
Yeah, you've got to think Bidoof is one of the best options here, knowing that next turn you've got that Bibarel and you've got that engine for the game, but it's not going to be found in there. And if you've not got a KO here and you've not got a V-Star and your ability locked, it's starting to look really rough. That path to the peak and that little setup from Ryota there,
Oh,
it seems
it's
like
horrible. You can see him looking out to the crowd. His head drops now. Is this really happening in Game 3?
And it's Game 3 of the top 4 of the World Championships. This is, you know, the biggest possible stage, literally and figuratively. That stage out there is huge. And it's just, you need just something, not even that much. But there's nothing here that's going to happen. I don't think Ondrej's even getting a KO here. We do get the Pump Kaboo,
yeah,
but I don't think we can get the Pump Kaboo and the Arceus.
No, he's just going to grab this so he improves his top decks. I'm not even sure if you... Yeah, I don't think you even try and gust up the Crobat. I think you just hold the boss's orders as well. I think you just attach a Lightning Energy to your Arceus and pass the turn, honestly. You need to keep your Ultra Ball top decks live.
Yeah, you absolutely do. That's got to be the case. And now there is, it's not easy, but there is a potential for Hisui and Decidueye to KO Hisui and Decidueye here if we V-Star up.
Yeah.
So obviously you need to V-Star before you do so. It's a bit awkward, but that is a potential play here. That would be a huge swing. And then, of course, you've got it on board to deal with any Arceus. It's a lot to ask for, but if it's possible, that would be a great play from Ryota here to really jump ahead in the game and put Ondrej in an awkward position.
Ryota has Ultra Ball, and also has a basic Lightning, as well as Capture Energy. So I think we'll be seeing a Trinity Nova this turn.
Yeah.
Here comes the Capture Energy. Ryota can also try and develop a Flying Pikachu at the same time here. And again, have multiple threats on the board. These Capture Energies have been clutch for Ryota to have these multiple threats lined up. It's not the easiest of Ultra Balls, but I think you make the play because Trinity Nova is huge here.
It really is, and if you can get to the late game with multiple attackers set up, it means things like Marnie, things like Path to the Peak become so much less devastating. It's always good to have multiple options available, and we did see in the previous games that Flying Pikachu VMAX can be a really, really useful attacker. So it looks like we're going to see the Ultra Ball coming down here, which has got to be for an Arceus V-Star at this stage, because you need the energy in hand to KO with Hisui and Decidueye, and it's just not there. So you go for the Arceus. You are ability locked, so we're not getting any Starbirth here, but you get that going, deal a bunch of damage, it accelerates some energy, and what this actually does is it puts the potentially biggest threat on the board, that being the potential Hisui and Decidueye V-Star, into a very manageable range.
Yeah, and even if Ondrej is able to get a Hail Mary top deck here, which he's going to need, by the way.
Oh, yes.
To stay in this game, the Decidueye can't really run away with the game, which is what he was kind of threatening to do on that first turn after the attachment. So Ryota's got a big break, gets one Lightning Energy out of his deck to attach to his Flying Pikachu here. And Ondrej really is in a situation where he has to top deck a strong card here. We're looking for Arceus V-Star, we're looking for Ultra Ball. What do we see? It's a Professor's Research.
That's not bad. As far as top decks go, that is not bad.
You certainly use your Pump Kaboo here, remove Path of the Peak, get rid of your other cards here. Professor's Research, keeping Ondrej in the game. Let's see how it treats him. We see the Hisui and Decidueye and
we've got the Arceus
We can
V-Star.
Starbirth.
Yeah, this is big. This puts Ondrej right back in the game.
This is massive. It means Ondrej could still be the first person to take 2 prizes here using his Hisui and Decidueye thanks to some key weakness. It's not an easy path for him. He'd have to Starbirth for the Fighting Energy and the V-Star, but I think you certainly go for this line.
Yeah, I think you do. You take the first couple prizes. I mean, Ryota's still in a very good position. You can KO right back with basically anything. Your Hisui and Decidueye V-Star's not getting one-hit KO'd, so you can use that to potentially take 4 prizes off the Decidueye and then off of the Arceus as well. You've got that Flying Pikachu sitting there in reserve, ready to go in future turns. I don't think this is looking bad for Ryota, but that top deck has absolutely bailed Ondrej out, because as it stood, I mean, a bad top deck there would, like you say, have almost ended the game. But getting Professor's Research, getting that Arceus, such a big deal.
We do see the evolution as well as the Fighting Energy attachment. No spoilers there. What was Starbirth for? I wonder if Ondrej will also put down his own Pikachu here. Seems like a good choice. It can be a natural pivot for him on future turns, as well as being a threatening attacker for Ryota's own Flying Pikachu. We will see the Somersault Feathers. Does exactly 280. after reducing the damage with double turbo. It's plenty to deal with. The Arceus V-Star here. We'll see how Ryota can respond. Going pretty quickly. He's just going to attack with the Hisuian Decidueye V here, so his hand is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, close quarters shooting is enough, but really didn't do much else in the turn.
I mean, what you really wanted to do there was get the V-Star, really buff up your HP, and I mean, it's still probably out of range of anything Ondrej's got, but, you know, getting that extra HP, and also, that might have worked this turn. It's not going to work next turn. You need more to get the KO on the Arceus. You're going to need the V-Star. So, yeah, Ryota's keeping up with the prize race here, but he's going to need a bit more.
The pendulum swinging back towards Ondrej. He has got the double turbo energy already in hand. He can establish Path of the Peak again because Ryota is still yet to use his own V-Star power here. And you can actually start powering up your own flying Pikachu thanks to the free retreat. Ondrej's going to have a quick peek at the discard pile for Ryota. And I mean, you certainly don't play the Marnie. I feel like it's a pretty bad choice after your opponent literally just retreated and attacked.
No, that wouldn't be ideal, honestly.
I mean, he's debating it just for more options on the following turn.
There's
the Path of the Peak certainly comes down. Ondrej, I feel like you have to hold this Marnie. Your opponent did nothing. Yep, just going to be the Trinity Nova here. And now Ryota's in top deck mode. If he can find his own V-Star, he can take an instant response knockout. If not, Ondrej's going to likely tank a hit and knock out Ryota's only real threat on the board.
Yeah, and then it's going to come down. I mean, if we see a KO here, it's going to come down to Flying Pikachu, because in theory, Ryota's map here is you KO the Arceus, and then you use your Flying Pikachu into Flying Pikachu. So Ryota actually really needs an energy attachment this turn, or else you're relying on that double turbo, which is an option, but it would be nice to not have to rely on the double turbo. Getting that energy attachment this turn would be big. So over the next couple turns, we need 2 energy on the Flying Pikachu, we need the V-Max, we need the Hisuian Decidueye V-Star, maybe some Gusting. That would pretty much guarantee Ryota the win here, but it's asking a lot, and he hasn't done very much at all.
I think the top deck was Arceus.
It looks like an Arceus, so they're really, and there's not going to be a KO if that was Arceus.
The Path of the Peak, I think, was big from Ondrej, because I believe there's Ball Search, but you've denied the Luminion, you've denied even the V-Star power from the Hisuian Decidueye. Yeah, Ryota just has been hit by the Path, I believe.
Needs one more card. With one more card, you could search out the Pumpkaboo to bump the stadium, and then you could go and get your V-Star power. That's not going to work. I mean, do you just go for Hisuian? I mean, you've got to go with Hisuian Decidueye V-Star here. Just get the KO.
Yeah.
And then hope that you've got something better next turn. You're going to need double turbo and Pikachu VMAX and maybe Gusting. But I think that's what you've got. Oh, probably not Gusting, actually, because you're going to see the response. But I think here you've just got to do that and hope.
Ryota's deciding his discards. I think I like this best. If you hold the double turbo, you can turn attached to your Pikachu on the bench.
Oh,
as you said, that map is laid out for you. You simply get rid of the Arceus at this stage. Oh, gonna get rid of the double turbo energy. This is an interesting choice. Also gonna get rid of the Arceus. So he's holding on to, I believe, another Ultra Ball in his hand.
Yes, there is another Ultra Ball. And the Ultra Ball could be really big for getting, say, Luminion if that Path to the Peak isn't there for whatever reason. We are going to see the Hisuian Decidueye V-Star. And in theory, assuming that Ondrej takes a response KO with Flying Pikachu, which looks to be the play, Ryota should win the game because of weakness, should actually win the game with, oh no, double turbo wouldn't quite be enough because, so maybe that's where we're going. We need kind of a turn attachment this turn and next.
Yeah, he's trying to eye things up with basic energy and maybe even capture energy to be able to cleanly one-hit KO Ondrej's Flying Pikachu. So important math here coming down to it. It's well recognized from Ryota.
Yeah, that's why the double turbo had to go, because it wasn't actually going to get the KO. If we do see, okay, that's good. We have seen the attachment here. So actually, next turn, Ryota just needs the Flying Pikachu VMAX and an energy, and that should be game at this stage. We are going to see 2 cards off the prizes, which are going to be big. We didn't quite get a peek at what they were, unfortunately, so we don't actually know what prizes were taken. But there are 3 cards in hand, and there's going to be a top deck. And it's really annoying that that Sui and Decidueye is not going to be able to use that ability to draw more cards. Now, Ondrej does actually get the Bibarel down eventually, so we are going to see some industrial incisors. But honestly, it's not really up to Ondrej at this stage. It is take the KO and cross your fingers that Ryota whiffs. At this stage, if Ryota gets everything they need, we should see them going into the final. But they've got a free card hand and their ability locked.
And hold on, there's still the option of Fly. Don't forget it.
Oh, let's not forget about Fly.
You gotta respect the Fly. Ondrej gonna freely retreat so he can minus the switch from hand and go back into the Flying Pikachu to improve his Industrious Incisors. And I mean, how poetic would this be if it's a role reversal Fly here?
Fly would take the KO at this stage and then set Ondrej up potentially for getting a KO on, you know, well, basically the reverse Flying Pikachu KO. So you're right, this could come down to a Fly.
My goodness, not again. My heart can't take this. We're going to see a manual attachment to the Bibarel. 2 cards from Ondrej. Can he use Lysander? No boss's orders.
Oh.
So he can't pick up an attack on the opposing Flying Pikachu.
That would be huge.
So I think we're going to be looking at Quick Ball here from Ondrej, removing an Arceus V-Star from hand. But I think, you know, he can play a Professor's Research or Romani. And at this point, you're thinking, as Ondrej, is it better odds for me to Mani, look for a VMAX and Max Balloon? Or is it better for me to just take the raw 50-50 of Fly?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. And the honest answer is I honestly don't know.
It's tight. I think
so
we're going to see Ondrej looking at the discard pile, certainly, to see how many basic energy Ryota has gone through. I think there's just 1 capture energy remaining in Ryota's deck that could be manually attached for the Max Balloon KO next turn. So it's whether Ondrej believes the Fly is better odds, or if it's going to be a Mani Max Balloon and hope that Ryota cannot get 1 manual attachment and their own VMAX response, thanks to this big lightning weakness that the Pikachus share.
Yeah, who would have thought the top 4 of the World Championships would come down to Pikachu
real game
hitting
now
Pikachu for weakness and flying on a coin flip. I mean,
right, it's a Professor's Research instead. So Ondrej is looking to
get the VMAX.
Yeah, has the VMAX option now, and it's another debate for him. Do you now commit to a Fly, or do you take the guaranteed damage and hope that Ryota cannot dig towards their last energy attachment as well as VMAX?
Yeah, I think this has gone.
Ondrej doesn't want to take the 50-50. He thinks he has better odds this way round.
I have no idea. We need to know what the odds are of Ryota getting those 2 cards, but without knowing what's still in the deck, without knowing what the cards are in Ryota's hand, we do not have the information we need to make that call. So Ondrej is going for it. We are going to see the KO. And it all comes down to this. If Ryota has an Energy and a Flying Pikachu VMAX, he will KO Ondrej's Flying Pikachu VMAX and get the win. If he doesn't, the opposite is going to happen. We do see an Ultra Ball.
Do we have that? Flying Pikachu.
Oh, but we don't have...
Ultra Ball. I don't think... Is there any supporter here?
We've got a Quick
Ball removing an Ultra Ball.
I mean, that could potentially go for the Pump Kaboo, but that's not going to do much. If there wasn't a path to the peak, this would be prime Luminion time. You know, this basically being the reason why Ryota saved the Luminion for the mid-game, didn't choose to use it earlier. This is the time, but it's not going to work. And the fact that Ryota's asking to look at the discard, this is so awkward. I mean, you would have to retreat into the Crobat and just hope.
The Crobat can tank.
Should be able to. I mean, we know there's no choice belt, so...
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to get a
Not over yet, officially.
We've got an Eevee coming out here.
Eevee can also be retreated into as a 1-prize Pokemon.
That might be the option.
Trying to desperately buy himself a turn, as he wasn't helped out enough from the prize cards or his top deck.
We are 1 energy away from Ryota booking their place in the World Championship Finals, but it does not look like they've got it. Ondrej here will win potentially. I mean, assuming we retreat into the Eevee, which we've got.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it is Professor's Research. All he needs is 1 energy to attach manually, and he will be going to the World Championship Finals. This could not be bigger, and I'm not exaggerating. What have we got? What have we got? What have we got? Show us your hand. I'm not seeing it
I mean, you slam it.
Yeah,
you slam it.
If it's there, you slam it. There is a Pump Kaboo, though, but then there isn't any ability to use.
No.
Is there a Luminion or any way to get Luminion?
He's just played the Professor's Research.
No, and yeah, you're right, the Professor Research came down.
There weren't many outs. I think it was exactly the capture energy that Ryota was digging for there.
That was so exciting and it didn't work.
I mean, that is the fine margins. Like we said, take the raw 50-50 of fly for Ondrej, or you hope that the hand doesn't get Ryota there. He took the latter, and it looks like as long as Ondrej has a means of gusting up Ryota's flying Pikachu, Ondrej will be progressing to the finals.
Have we spied his hand? Have we seen it?
I think he has ball search cards. I think it's going to be Industrious Incisors.
Okay. Industrious Incisors. And you did say he plays the 4 copies of Boss's Orders exactly for moments like this. So you can really up your chances of drawing it to the highest possible level. This is so down to the wire. We got plenty of time left. Time's not an issue. We are in game 3 of top 4, trying to decide who gets into the finals. And it's just turn after turn of maybe they can do it. Oh, no, they didn't. Maybe they can do it. Oh, and that's just adding insult to injury there, having that capture energy. So there is the
Ondrej can go low. I think he can go to 0 cards and get a full 5 from Bibarel here. I believe he's at least got Ultra Ball in hand. He can manually attach. He can bench a Crobat for no effect if he really wants to.
Oh, you absolutely want to.
Yeah.
You know you lose to an energy next turn. So you've absolutely got to do it. Although, to be fair, you could not attack and force Ryota to have a switch as well, which would actually definitely be the better option. So when you're losing to a switch and an energy, and you've got to go for it at this stage. You've got to do absolutely everything you can to put yourself in the best position. You empty your hand out as much as you can. You try and go, and then just, I mean, even potentially retreating into a Pumpkaboo as well. Just, you know, force gusting and switching and energy, and just
if we want a real standoff, if for some reason Ondrej does miss here, we're seeing his outs. I think there's at least 2 Boss's Orders, possibly even 3. Ondrej's now saying, how can I get to 0 cards? Taking no Pokemon is part of that answer. We have another Quick Ball here, can remove 1 of the energy, then he can manually attach, bench the flying Pikachu, and it'll be a big barrel for 5 additional cards here.
And all we need to see is the Boss's Orders. Boss's Orders means you can bring up Flying Pikachu VMAX, KO with Flying Pikachu VMAX, book your space in the World's Final, which is definitely not something we were expecting to see when we came into this event. But it really is a Flying Pikachu party right now. We are all invited, but are we going to see that final Boss's Orders? It's kind of big, Joe.
Ondrej is waiting for Ryota to shuffle his deck. And here is the Destiny 5 cards.
There's 2. We've not seen it yet.
Boss's Orders, the final card.
He's got it. He gets himself into the World Championship Finals. Ondrej is going to be going in to face our other Japanese player in the finals. We've got Daichi, we've got Ondrej, we have got our World Championship Finals set. That was such a tense end game.
And Ondrej's body language says everything. That was an absolute roller coaster, a nail biter, an incredible series there. Both players had moments to win the game. And wow, I mean, we have to do this all again tomorrow.
We absolutely do. I mean, if our first game today was one of the weirdest comebacks we've ever seen, and we've done quite a few games on stream together, then this was probably the most nail-biting game. Just turn after turn of almost having it, and that was just such a fantastic finish. We saw Ryota there just missing out, being 1 energy short of putting himself through to the World Championship Finals, and then Ondrej just coming in, getting that Boss's Orders off of that Bibarel, booking their space in the World Championship Finals. That's why Worlds is different.
My goodness, my heart is pounding right now. There were some epic plays being done there, both players taking huge hedges at times. And wow, amazing scenes there. Ryota as well, a fantastic competitor, really a fan favorite. And in the crowd, you could see moments where he was praying for top decks at times and really understanding what Pokemon is all about here at the World Championships. He's been amazing to see, but it will not be an all-Japanese final. Ondrej is here to spoil the party.
Yes, unfortunately, we will have a European-Japanese final, just like we had a European-Japanese top 4 and another European-Japanese top 4. We are running it back, and we could still see that every 6 years Japanese winner that we've gotten used to, or we could see a European winner. And let's face it, the Worlds before last, we saw Robin Schultz win Worlds. So Europeans at Worlds lately have been doing pretty gosh darn well for themselves. But we are going to see actually pretty much that exact same matchup. I mean, Ondrej just beat a Japanese player with pretty much that exact deck list to get into the finals, and now if they want to be the world champion, they've got to basically beat a Japanese player with that deck list.
Just do it again. It's that simple. I mean, no, it was far from simple. It was a nail biter for certain. There are big moments in turns here. There's big coin flips as well to be had. There's key weakness mapping that both players have to navigate. There is so much intricacy to this matchup. I can't wait to see it again.
It's going to be so much fun. Of course, the Flying Pikachu VMAX actually ended up being extremely pivotal because actually you don't have that many attackers. And Pikachu VMAX, as we saw, is kind of a good attacker, but then it hits itself for weaknesses. It kind of makes me feel like I'm back in 2012 watching Mewtwo EX hit itself for weakness, except it's Flying Pikachu VMAX. And that became really pivotal in all of those